All right, so it is recording again. All right, so we are back in recording. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the June 16th public hearing of the Baltimore City Municipal and Zoning Appeals. My name is Derek Baumgartner. I will be your moderator for today's hearing. The chairman, James Fields, will be running the show, so to speak, once we get started. A few ground rules for everyone. Our hearings will be going forward. There's in a similar a means as possible to how we normally function, just albeit on the virtual platform. When your case is called, I will try to find you on the attendees list. I will unmute you. You will have the opportunity to address the board members. We'll then call for any opposition from the community in support or in opposition. Be patient with us as we go through that process, as we have to find you on the list and then review, and sometimes it can take a couple moments. Couple ground rules. Please try to mute your either your login or your phone when you're not talking, or when questions are being asked of you. And then remember to unmute yourselves when you are testifying. If there's background noise, see if you can get away from that background noise, as it does tend to make the hearing a little bit more difficult to hear for everyone involved. There is, at the bottom of your screen, several bubbles, and this is true if you are logged in on your phone or on a tablet or device or computer. At the bottom of your screen, where there the participants tab, if you click on it, then you find your name, there's a hand there. So when we call a case, if you're interested in testifying about that case, please click on your virtual hand. That raises your hand, and that lets me know that you would like to testify. Again, please only click that hand raise when we call that case, so that we know that you're interested in testifying about that particular case. Once you are done testifying, please then unclick or uncheck that hand, which lowers the virtual hand. Another thing that we're going to add today that we didn't have in past hearings, there are a number of folks who have called in. In a couple moments, I'm going to unmute our call-in folks one at a time. If you'd like to testify, please just give me your name and the case number that you'd like to testify about, so that we can come back to you when that case is called. If you do not wish to testify, you can simply remain silent on the phone, and that just lets us know that you're not interested in testifying or in identifying yourself, which is fine. This is a public hearing. Anyone is entitled to watch or listen in. Let me see here. So let's go ahead and do that right now. If you are on the phone, when I unmute you, you will hear two beeps. When you hear those two beeps, that's your opportunity to let me know your name and which case number you're here to testify about. Again, if you do not wish to testify, you can simply remain silent or simply say that you're not interested in testifying. So our first call-in user, the first four digits, or I'm sorry, the first 3 digits of your phone number, you're indicated as call-in user number 4, and that's a 517 number. So I'm unmuting you, 517. If you are going to be testifying in the case, please give me your name and the case number. Call-in user number 4. If you're going to be testifying, please give me your name and the case number, or the proper address. Hearing no response, I will mute you. Next call-in is call-in user number 5. This is a 410710 number. You should be hearing 2 beeps. So call-in user number 4. Will you be testifying in any particular case? All right, just two more to go. We have calling user number 5. I'm going to be unmuting you. So calling user number 5, if you could give me your name and the case number that you're here to testify about. No testimony. And last but not least, calling user number 6. This is a 443803 number. I'm going to unmute you. You'll hear 2 beeps.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Jeff. My name is Jesse Williamson.
All right. And what case?
It's case 2020-78.
Okay.
And I'm a Baltimore City public school teacher.
Okay.
I've been, I don't know what else you want me to say at this point.
Yes, that's fine. That's the last case in the docket. So when we get there, we will come back to you and unmute you to provide testimony in that case. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
It looks like those are the calling users. At this point in time, I will turn it over to the chairman to begin for today.
Very well. Call to order the June 16th, 2020 docket for the Baltimore Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. As you all know, the board will vote on each case and make a decision at the end of the docket. If you certainly can be present to hear that virtually. But otherwise, you can call the BMDA office tomorrow morning after 9 a.m. The number is 410-396-4301. Again, 410-396-4301. You should receive your decision in the mail within 30 days. And we ask, as always, that you not do any work until your resolution is received, and you not do any work in Baltimore City without pulling the proper permits. Do not have any consent cases today. Let's just jump into the docket. Calling the first case on the docket, number 2020-20, 428 South Bond Street. James Lozen is to continue to use the premises as 2 dwelling units.
That's correct. I was just going to add that we had originally heard this case on May 19th. We have a certain amount of evidence in the record already. If the board feels comfortable with that evidence, we can close out the evidentiary portion. But Mr. Previs is on the attendees list. If anyone would like to hear from him or from possibly his client about this particular appeal.
I'll just ask a question of Mr. Previs. Have you at this point, Mr. Previs, submitted all the information and documentation in support of the application that you'd like the board to review or consider?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Previs. Yes, everything that would be submitted has been submitted, sir.
Very well. Unless anyone else has any questions, I think the evidence in the record is sufficient.
Any other questions?
I'm good. I'm good.
No questions for me.
All right. Does that conclude 2020-20? And we'll deliberating on that one at the end of the document. Are we good, Derek, to move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. On the case of 2020-68, 533 through 535 North Belnord Avenue, Mr. Adam Corballo, this is a request to continue to use the premises as 3 dwelling units. And I'll ask for any staff reports if we have.
So we have nothing in the file. I will turn it over to Mr. French if there's any report from the planning department.
Thank you. Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that this property was previously approved by the board for 3 dwelling units, but was the subject also of a vacant house notice in 2017. The department has no objection to the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Follow on.
I believe so, yes, sir.
Mr. Caballo, tell us about the project.
You might be.
Yes, so as Mr. French, Mr. Baumgartner mentioned, this property was previously used as a 3 dwelling unit density. It's 2 adjoining end of group row houses. It consists of 533 and 535 North Belnord. Basically 3 dwelling units. I've in my documentation, I've shown the existing layout, which is not proposed to be changed in any major way. Basically just renovating the property. I'm representing the new owner of the property, who is, I don't know exactly when they purchased this property, but probably in the last year, I believe. And they are interested in bringing this back and renovating it. There are 3 existing electric meters as well as a public meter for a total of 4 electric meters. I've documented those existing meters in my BMZA documentation, and there also are 3 gas meters that are existing, and I've also documented it. So Derek is showing up. I'm showing up on the screen right now. So that, there's sort of evidence that this has been used, and we have an owner who is motivated to activate this property, renovate it, and bring it back for a useful use. It also does have a garage, which allows for 1 off-street parking space. There are no additions proposed to the building, just interior renovation.
And the benefit of the board members, our staff report shows that the variance requested is for that 3rd dwelling unit, and it's based on lot area, so it's a density variance, and it's only a variance of 12%.
Any questions from the board at this time?
I have no question.
Is there anyone on the line that, or who's logged in that would like to testify about this case, either in support or in opposition? Again, please raise your virtual hand and/or send a message in the chat feature to indicate that you would like to testify. Now I'm seeing no hands raised and no messages in the chat box, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Mr. Caballo, is there anything else you'd like to add at this time?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you for your presentation, sir. And stick around, as I'm going to call you in the next case. Next case being called on the docket is case number 2020-69, 2214 Canary Court. Again, Mr. Caballo, this is a request to raise first-story rear addition, reconstruct and expand as 2-story rear addition, including overhang into public right-of-way. And I'll ask for any staff reports for this.
Again, Planning Department has reviewed this application, has no comment on it, does note that the board previously approved a very similar application by the same applicant a couple of years ago. And again, the subject condition was that they also obtain a minor privilege permit for extending over the public right-of-way. And obviously, the Planning Department is supportive of that also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Mr. Caballo, want to tell us about this project?
Yeah, so as been previously stated, this project was the subject of a variance application. The original hearing date was April 17th of 2018. we were granted an approval for really this exact same request. The owner had some financial difficulties soon after we got the variance approved. Those difficulties have been overcome, and they are planning on moving forward with their original plan. In fact, the request, the scale of the addition is the exact, it's identical to the request that we made back in April of 2018. So we're just trying to start things back up again. And we're in agreement that we will obtain the minor privilege for any portion of the proposed addition projecting into the public right of way.
Well,
And as part of my documentation, I did present a copy of the approval documentation as part of my submission, and as part of my presentation that I submitted to the zoning board.
and do we have anyone else who wishes to testify on this matter?
If there's anyone from the public that would like to testify, please raise your virtual hand and or send a message in the chat feature. I'm going to unmute, because we only have 3 callers. I'm going to simply unmute them very quickly to see if anyone would like to testify. If you've called in, you should have just heard 2 beeps on your phone. If you're interested in testifying about this case, 2020-69, 2214 Canary Court, this is your opportunity. Would anyone like to testify in opposition or in support for this appeal? Hearing none, I'm muting our call-in participants. I do not see any virtual hands raised, nor has anyone sent a message in the chat feature indicating that they would like to testify, Mr. Chairman.
Calling the next case on the docket, 2020-78, 5721 Pimlico Road, Scott Miller, Phoenix. The request is to use a portion of the premises as a community center. Ask for staff reports for this project.
We do have several letters from the community. Let me pull those up, Mr. Chairman. If Mr. French would like to give his report, if Wayne has one, while I these papers.
Certainly, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that in this particular zoning district, which is R1, educational facilities, primary and secondary, are conditional uses, but educational facilities, commercial, vocational, are not. Therefore, the key in the opinion of the Planning Department is what is the exact description of the proposed use and which of those 2 categories of educational facility would it be most appropriately classified as. Therefore, the department has no objection to the application if the applicant demonstrates for the board that the proposed use would not be a commercial educational facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French.
And Mr. Chairman, we have several letters here, some in support, some in opposition. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 letters of support that were submitted by the applicant with their application. Therefore, they're from a number of individuals, I believe some of which live in the community, others of which live elsewhere. They say, I write in support of this permit at its current location. As a Mount Washington resident since 2006, I welcome the addition of BIOMA as a positive community influence. BIOMA offers classes that benefit all facets of Mount Washington, young and old, men and women. They offer classes in yoga, painting, various martial arts, and a venue for gatherings in the community. It is within walking distance of many schools, churches, and our retirement community on Rogers Avenue, as well as being accessible by public transportation. The instructors are highly respected in the regional martial arts community, as well as being certified teachers. So this is from a resident in the greater area. Other letters kind of repeat these similar themes. This one says that the applicant taught in Baltimore City Public Schools for over 25 years. I'm sorry, this writer has taught in Baltimore City Public Schools for over 25 years. Has been studying martial arts with the applicant since they met. And there are other letters of similar, in a similar vein. I believe we have a letter in opposition from the Mount Washington Community Association. And then we also have an email that was sent, so let me find it. I'm ready to oppose this appeal located at 5721 Pimlico Road. Our property is adjacent to the recently built structure that is the proposed community center, which is likely a commercial enterprise. Please note that the Mount Washington Improvement Association has opposed the zoning change. The proposed community center is located in a quiet residential area of Mount Washington. There are no commercial enterprises anywhere near us. This business would be completely uncharacteristic for this area and detrimental to the quality of life of residents and to property values. The appellant has operated a martial arts studio out of his garage for several years. I think that this was likely, let's skip that part. We haven't complained in the past because the enterprise was relatively small. However, the newly constructed building is many times larger than the original garage. The new structure is already an eyesore in the neighborhood. It is inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood. It is located only a few feet from my property line. There will be additional traffic and noise coming from this community center that will detract from the quality of life in the neighborhood. That's the substance of that particular letter from a neighbor. I believe that's all we have from what we received from community members and the applicant. Again, there are more letters of support that were submitted by the applicant, but a lot of them kind of say the same thing, that they support the operator and they support the proposed use. I would echo the planning department's report in terms of hearing from the applicant about the actual use of the property, kind of the day in and day out use of the property, as to whether or not that falls within the definition of a community center. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Derek, does the file have any photograph of the building?
Let me see here.
And was it permitted?
So they received a permit to extend what was a garage. Let me find that real quick. There we go. So there was a building permit that was issued on September 25th, 2019. It says existing garage being converted to workout area with bathroom. All work to be done according to Baltimore City Code and per architectural drawings. Alterations to include existing garage being converted to workout room with bathroom. So that's the permit that was pulled in 2019. And that was the last permit pulled other than like electrical permits.
Thank you.
And I can, let me see if I can find our applicant on this drop-down box. So, Mr. Miller, I have upgraded you to a panelist, and I've unmuted you. Mr. Chairman, if you wanted to proceed.
Very well. Mr. Miller, tell us about the project and with particular respect to intended use of the community center. When's it going to operate? What will you be doing in it? Tell us about this.
Mr. Miller, are you there? So I see you and I have unmuted you. We go to my email to see if there's any email updates. There are no email updates. Again, calling Mr. Miller, Scott Miller. I see you here as Scott 2020-78 Miller Phoenix. You're unmuted on our end. I don't see any chat messages either. Ah, there you are. So we see you on the screen, we just can't hear you. So you just muted yourself. Now you're unmuted. So Mr. Miller, if you can hear me, if you can log out and log back in, that might allow you to have access to the portal. I can see you talking, we just can't hear you. So tell you what, if you can log out and then log back in, because you are unmuted on our end, I think the problem might be on your end.
Me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm sorry.
All right.
Good afternoon to the board. I'm sorry for the delay. Okay, to answer your question, I'm a retired teacher. It's my wife, Naila Magwood Phoenix. We originally, the roof on the garage, the old garage was going and we had to replace it. I used to use that as a small gym workout area. And sometimes I would bring students from my club at Hopkins University here. We also had a couple motorcycles, a couple other kids that lived here at the time when we upgraded. We're going to upgrade the garage. So we decided to upgrade it to a 4-car garage with a studio. But we had a 7-year-old and that got rid of the motorcycles. So we still upgraded the garage. We had some problems with some contractors the last couple of years, so it kind of delayed the project. And at the time we began this, the zoning was slightly different, I believe. So when we finally got past the problem with the contractors and got the building built, we put in for the use permit. So we were just going to have some after-school programming. Especially from out Washington, we had kids that went through that whole school years ago. We know they always have a problem with after-school programs being overcrowded. Also, we had some adult class. We have some yoga, which they also do at the Methodist Church right here, a couple blocks away. So just to make sure that you know that there are other enterprises going on in the neighborhood, which is good. And some adult martial arts programs, mainly some of the stuff that I have from Hopkins, another space for some of the students to come. So very small classes. Arts and crafts. Arts and crafts. We have an art studio in there also. And in fact, I believe one of the people adjacent to us, she came over the other day. We took her through the studio. She has 2 kids in 3rd grade. She was the former chair of the Mount Washington School Board there, and her children were interested in art classes with my wife if we are able to get our use permit. So it's that kind of agenda. It's small. There's plenty of parking for the small numbers of people we're talking about. We're talking about operating after school time or during the day. You can't really see the building from certain angles. the size of the building, the garage. From the street, we have an acre fenced in Mount Washington. That's a lot of land for this area. So it's pretty secluded and very quiet. We also have the police training center and first responder center here in the neighborhood, which they're rebuilding. And I instruct a number of first responders and police officers, so in the community and outside the community. So it would be a good resource also in that regards. So that's kind of where we're coming from. When we talked to housing, I went to housing to address any concerns they had. They suggested out of the 2 designations that we put community center, because that kind of fit kinds of things that we were doing. So that's why that's on there.
And just to kind of piggyback, I just want to be more succinct with your question, Mr. Fields, around the hours of operation. They vary day by day. However, if a full day would be like 8 a.m. and the last class ending probably around 8 p.m. And the classes are very small in size. As my husband said, we have about 10 people maybe per class. With the arts and crafts class, it's probably more like 6 in terms of the space and how many people can fit in that space. And there are no signs on the street to say this is a community center. There's no signs that say this is a business. You have to know that it's here. You can't just walk down the street and know that this is a place where you can come and get arts and crafts classes or martial arts classes.
Actually, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm
I
sorry.
was about to say, do you charge a fee for the classes that you teach?
Do we charge a fee for the classes? What?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Where's the garage located on your property? Is it off an alley, a driveway, or what?
It's off a dead-end alley, I guess.
Yeah. So it's behind our house, about 140 feet from the street, because it's about 70 feet just to the fence. And maybe another 50, 60 feet till you even get to the garage in the back of the. So the garage sits in the middle of the acre, basically.
Is it a little red brick building like next to your house?
It used to be, yes.
Yeah. Okay. But that's the space where it is,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Yeah.
And behind that, towards the back now, it's extended. It's like double the size it was.
And it starts back. If you look at Google Images of your address right now, it starts back past that red brick building, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct. And I included pictures in what we submitted to the director from the street at different angles so you could see. So I don't know if, that's helpful.
And I did want to piggyback on your initial question about charging. One of the things that, in terms of kind of our market niche, is that we are below what other organizations charge, because our target population is kids that are maybe on free and reduced lunch, or first responders that may need more support around like martial arts in terms of defending themselves from attack, from assailants, things like that. So I just wanted to kind of preface that for you a little bit.
We will also be working very hard to help get that kind of thing funded so kids won't have to come out their pocket. So the idea is to, make it as a resource for the community. They really have a great need there. Mr. Day used to be the gym teacher at the school there. It's been a few years. They have a new gym teacher, somebody I used to work with, and they always have lots of problems just at Mount Washington Elementary Middle with after school programs. So that was one of the 2 main ways we were going to, use the property. But again, you really have to know, and you have to be in the community.
Mr. Baumgartner is putting up photographs that we submitted.
That's right.
So if you all can see at the bottom, so there's the photograph that he has up is the arts and crafts studio. And so you could see that it seats about 5 people. If you can see it, it's like a few easels and an art space with the arts and the paints and such, and a work table, a little sink.
Thank you, Mr. Bumgarner.
Thank you. This is a smaller room. It's,
Yoga.
Yeah, yoga is done in this space here. If you want to put up another picture, we can kind of explain what that is.
How do I make it so that I can see their images? Because all I see is them, and I see you holding up like a tiny tile on my screen.
There's actually, you can dial up our website.
You also have to go to gallery view. Avery, go to gallery view, and then everybody is the same size. At the top of your screen, it should say grid view or grid view. So there's active speaker video, active speaker and thumbnail. You want grid view.
Grid. Yes, better.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so this is the mat space. And we call it a mat space because there's obviously like the great part is like cushions. And when we have, you know, like, what is it called, honey? I'm bad at that. The worship space.
Oh.
What is it called?
You're talking about the showman.
The showman.
The
Yes.
altar.
The altar, the showman is there. And it's just wood floor kind of around the mat space. So that is basically the 3 rooms that this encompasses. This is it from the outside.
Okay.
Also, recommendation was to show that we're not a commercial educational facility. We're not giving diplomas, high school diplomas or associate's degrees or any of that kind of thing. No certifications. We're not going through the state board of, we do have 2 certified teachers who would be instructors. And my wife has a early childhood certificate. So, you know, we will of course use that expertise, but we're not an educational facility in that regard, primary, secondary, or post-secondary.
Okay, what is this picture?
That looks from the outside.
Oh, that's.
Is that a street view?
Yeah, this is the street view. So this is when you're standing at our driveway. So you can see the driveway is of ample size where we can fit about 15 cars within our driveway. So there is little to no encroaching upon the community in terms of parking. And if you can see behind that huge tree, there's a house. That's our house. And then behind that
is our garage.
Is the community center.
Okay, so looking at this photo to the left looks like a brick building. Am I right?
Yes, that is the neighbor's house.
All right.
You wouldn't really even know if you didn't know, because you can't even tell the size of the building unless you went back there. So even from the street, when you see parts of the garage, it just looks like a garage, like, you know, depending on which angle you're standing from, it's just another building in the back, obviously, that's like a garage.
Derek, does this classify as a community center?
According to housing, they told us there are 2 designations we could do. They suggested community center. The other was art studio. And we fit both designations, but we put on there what they suggested.
I mean, I feel like art studio is a better fit. What?
Derek, you're on mute.
You're muted.
See, like I'm following like my own rules and then I forget. So a community center is defined under the zoning code as a facility in which people who live in the neighborhood or community are able to meet and carry on cultural, social, or recreational activities. And inclusions, it says that community centers include indoor and outdoor recreational facilities.
Well, what's a
What is
commercial
art
one?
studio defined as?
You got it. Art studio.
What's a commercial venture?
So the zoning code is intentionally vague on that. No rule that says that a community center has to be a nonprofit or anything like that. I believe there was an intent under the current newer zoning code to open up the term community center to make it a little bit more broad. But there is no definition for what a commercial venture is or is not. Let me pull Art Studio out.
If you accept payment for the classes, is that commercial?
Right. I was thinking that.
Well,
Probably, but that's
like even the YMCA had you to pay to be a member, but they
correct. And I think that was part of the reason why the new zoning code did not go into that type of concept, because they didn't want to restrict folks that were operating a community center but might need a little extra funding via classes. Because there is a difference between a community center and something like a rec center. Like a city rec center is not a community center. They have two different things.
Right.
So Art Studio. Art Studio means an establishment in which an art, a type of exercise, or an activity is taught, practiced, or studied, such as dance, martial arts, photography, music, painting, gymnastics, or yoga. It includes a performance space related to the classes taught on site and recording studios. A couple other exclusions, but they don't apply here. Let me check one quick thing. I'm going to the table of residential uses in the back of the zoning code. So Art Studio is not listed as a permitted or conditional use in R1 zoning district.
Okay.
That settles that part.
Yeah.
What is the what would the Y on 33rd Street? The YMCA on 33rd Street would be considered what under the code?
It's been there for a while, so I'm sure it's grandfathered in, but it would most likely be considered a community center. I guess the question for the board, and this is something that you all can deliberate after we close the evidence, but the applicant can certainly testify about this, is there's a difference between a community center and a gym as well. So they're distinctly different uses under the zoning code.
Is a gym permitted in R1?
No.
Okay.
Mind, Derek, I apologize.
Sure.
Reading the definition of the community center again.
You bet. A community center means a facility in which people who live in the neighborhood or community are able to meet and carry on cultural, social, or recreational activities. Inclusions of the community center include indoor and outdoor recreational facilities.
So there's no mention of fees?
No, that's correct.
It said live in the neighborhood. I mean,
it says neighborhood or community.
Or community. Okay.
So,
is community defined?
It is not.
Okay.
Okay.
I wish I could offer more guidance, but that's essentially. I will say that under the zoning code table for residential uses, there's a section for commercial uses, and that includes country clubs, daycare centers, lodges or social clubs. The community center use is in the grid that includes what are called institutional uses. So community centers, cultural facilities, educational facilities, government facilities, and places of worship, churches, synagogues, mosques, etc., are all conditional uses in the R1 district. So they would all be treated similarly to a community center.
Could you read that list again?
A community center, cultural facility like small museums, educational facility post-secondary, educational facility primary or secondary, government facilities, and places of worship are all conditional uses in the R1 district. And I think part of why, and again, this is my opinion, part of the reason why something like an art studio would not be included in this list is that the R1 district is typically rather large lots that are purposely set aside to have large setbacks. They don't necessarily have large buildings on them or large houses, but many do. And when you picture an art studio, you don't necessarily picture a large building on a large lot. So that may or may not be why you would not see something like an art studio listed on the table as a conditional use in the R1 district, but why you would see something like a community center, which typically would be a larger building that could house multiple different uses all under that community center category.
This is for the applicant. Would you mentioned classes may run from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Would someone be there all day at the community center?
You mean someone employee-wise or as far as clientele? Oh, yes. I'm retired, permanently retired, so I'm here all day. Now, there's not classes running all day. It's just when we say that, it means that we might have a morning yoga class. And then, then there'd be an after-school program. And then we might have an evening martial arts class. Small numbers, again. This is not, there's no desire or a plan to expand into some huge business in that regard. This is just, pretty small, just community-based. So there's only 2 or 3 people kind of really involved. 3 or 4 maybe with some, the other couple of instructors. So it's not a venture that we're trying to build a big business and have lots of traffic. It's pretty exclusive.
When I think of a community center, I think of something that almost anyone in a community could. I think more of a public space. I think of it as. I do think of walk-in traffic, to be honest, depending on what it is you have available. And also that folks would somehow know about it and learn about it as a resource for you. So how are you getting the word out about what it is you offer?
We haven't been able to get the word out because we've never been able to open, especially because like the moment it was built, we had to stop. But the intention is to like advertise in like Baltimore Child for the Mount Washington community. We were going to reach out to the Mount Washington Improvement Association to get the word out.
Someone else did. Also, like I mentioned, our neighbor who was Eileen here was the former president of Mount Washington School Board there. Friends with the new school board president who lives down the street. And she was just over saying, I can't wait to tell her we have kids coming up from school all the time and they can just come right to the house. So this is something that is for the community. That's the whole purpose. It's the surrounding community. The yoga instructor lives in the community, literally down the block. One of the other teachers has taught here around the community at Arlington for 12 years. He's a 25-year vet in the Baltimore City schools. So I mean, these are all community. We have police officers who live in the community that go to the club at Hopkins. They'd love to be able to come right here in the neighborhood. if it was possible. So this is a community-based enterprise. And it's small and quiet, but it's still service. Like I said, the Methodist Church is right 2 blocks away. They offer yoga in the basement. I've held camp there in past years. I've held camp and after-school program at Mount Washington. My kids went there, years and years ago. I've been commissioner here at the soccer, Mount Washington soccer for 25 years and coached, and we're vested in the community. These are ways that we're able to get the word out because we're involved in the community and been here. In fact, we've had people in our family and part of this community since its inception. So we've been around a long time. So that's how we would get the word out, because we've been in the community and we're connected to those groups. We haven't heard from the Mount Washington Brewing Association in any negative way. So maybe somebody called in there or is on the board, or they have a personal objection. We don't know anything about that, and we'd love to be able to address it if we could. But again, this is the designation that we were told by housing would probably fit kids playing outside and inside after school, and some community programs like yoga and arts and crafts.
You mentioned that your driveway could hold up to 15 cars. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you expect to park 15 cars in your driveway every day?
No.
No.
And this is not we wouldn't have close to that, not probably half that, maybe. We're not talking large numbers.
I mean, since it is a community center, a lot of it would be foot traffic. A lot of it would be people just being able to walk from their homes here to take a class. So in terms of having that many cars would really just be for maybe there's someone who's in the Roland Park area or something like that that wants to come over and participate. They probably have to drive, or maybe if they, couldn't walk, then they would drive. But it does hold 15. Our classes are small, and for kids classes, a lot of parents would likely just be dropping their kids off and then just coming to pick them up.
With Mount Washington Elementary Middle, they actually can designate have the bus drop them. So if they came to the program, the bus would stop once and deliver those children. They wouldn't even have to necessarily walk. So it's very convenient resource in the community.
What's the largest number of people you would expect it at any one time, highest capacity?
Maybe 20, 25. Like if we had a small seminar, maybe 20, 25 people.
And that wouldn't be on a regular basis. That would just be the max at for the biggest event that we would likely have.
That would be 2 or 3 hours a day, every once in a while, maybe, if that.
And what kind of event would that be?
So one of the martial arts is Aikido, and sometimes we have visiting instructors come from DC, let's say, and they might bring some people with them, and with people we might have in the class. That's how you would get 20, 25 people.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, just two quick additional things. Number one, for the parking issue, for motor vehicle parking, for community centers, the parking requirements are 1 space per 10 persons of rated capacity. We don't have a rated capacity for this property, but that requirement would be 1 space per 10 people, essentially. So that's the parking issue. Secondarily, I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware. So we have community centers are 1 designated use. The zoning code also has something called recreational indoor and recreation outdoor. So many rec centers, whether they're operated by the city or nonprofit, may have a designation as a recreational use indoor. And then if there's an outdoor component that might be equal in weight to the indoor component, they would have a recreational outdoor. So again, those are a separate use. And as we had mentioned earlier, a health center or would be considered a gym, and that would not be allowed. But again, They're different, slightly different definitions for all of those types of uses, depending upon what the predominant driver of that use is. And again, for a community center, it was intentionally defined to be relatively broad to incorporate lots of different types of uses. Under the old zoning code prior to 2017, the code was very specific. It listed very, very specific parameters for different uses. The thinking, at least when it was enacted in 2017, was to open up that a little bit so that if, say, a community center had something like chess was the main driver in that community center, but they wanted to change that to become a computer lab for kids. You have to go back through the entire permitting process to change from chess to computers. So the idea was to open that up a little bit to allow a facility to change with the times or to change with the interest in the community. And I said that was the purpose behind the relaxation of the definitional terms for something like a community center.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else present to testify in support of the project?
So let me see. We'll go down our list here. So we have. See, this is good because people are raising their virtual hand. This is great. So my instructions were at least clear enough for people to be able to figure that out. So we have 2 hands raised here. Mr. Chairman, I don't know whether these 2 folks want to testify in opposition or in support, but I do have 2 hands raised, and I do have 1 caller that had identified themselves as willing to testify. So if you would like, I can start to unmute people.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine.
Okay. So the first we have is someone that looks like on a handheld device that has logged in as 202078. I'm going to unmute you, and you'll be able to testify either in opposition or in support of the proposed use of this property. So I'm doing that right now. Just give it a couple moments to clear. All right, sir or ma'am, can you hear me?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are unmuted. Please give us your name, and then you're welcome to testify either in opposition or in support of this particular bill.
Great, thank you. My name is David Reynolds. I live in actually just behind the proposed community center. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members, for letting me testify. I am testifying in opposition for several reasons. Number one, I do have to dispute the characterization of the size of the building that was given earlier, that it was basically double the size of the existing garage. We have lived here for 22 years. We are very well aware of the size of things, in the backyard. This is directly across from our backyard. It is at least 4 to 6 times the footprint of the original building. This is not a small addition. It is also, the height is probably the height of a 2-story house now. So looking out our backyard, we have an enormous building. When they started doing this last year, I retired a little bit over a year ago, so I was around. It looked like it was originally going to be maybe a deck or an addition. We looked at the permits, and it did say, the building permit said, renovation of a garage into an exercise space, which is, a completely reasonable thing to do. However, the resulting building is actually more like a field house. If you actually come take a look at it, or even look at the picture on the website, it is an enormous building. So not only is it a larger footprint, but it is not in the center of the lot, as indicated. It is a very large lot, but you've got to know the lot it's on Pimlico Road. It is not tremendously wider than a normal lot, but it's very deep. It goes all the way, basically a city block down to the other end of the street. So there is an enormous amount of ground there, but this is off of the garage, which was up toward the front of the house. As I say, it is actually directly in our line of sight from our backyard. If we look out our backyard, we can see nothing but now this building. So it is much larger. So we are concerned about a number of things. Number one, as I was the one who wrote the letter in opposition that you read some of earlier on. There has been a martial arts studio run out of this garage for many years. We really never opposed it, even though, it was noisy, but it was only one day a week. It was basically Sunday morning, and they had outdoor classes. It was in the garage. When the weather got nicer, it was out in the outdoors. So it was rather irritating, a lot of noise, but it was only one morning a week. So it didn't seem like a huge problem. I fear with the looking at the existing building and looking at the website, it is going to expand much more than that. I mean, obviously, they've even said it's going to expand. If you look at the website, there are classes scheduled 6 days a week, some in the morning, some in the evening. So there is going to be constant people coming in and out and constant noise. It looks like, I've looked at the pictures, it looks like a great space inside. However, there is an extremely large roll-up door on the back end of the building, which indicates to me that that's going to be opened up in nicer weather, and it's going to be outdoors, which is also going to contribute to the noise. Among the things that concern me again about that, not only the number of people coming in, but one of the things that was done before and is on the docket, or at least on the schedule, are sword classes. So there is again a lot of
what kind of classes?
Sword play classes. So there is a lot of noise from I don't know martial arts, so I don't know what it is, but it is people banging sticks around, which makes a lot of noise. There's also I don't know if I'm wrong or what it is about this, but Friday night right now on the schedule, there's a Friday night fight night. So I can just imagine, there being a lot more noise, people getting enthusiastic. I understand that. I'm not opposed to any of those things, in the abstract. I'm opposed to where it's placed, because this really is in the middle of, an extremely quiet, completely residential neighborhood. There is anything like this in the neighborhood. And to characterize it as being kind of a studio back in the middle of the property is, I'm sorry, I disagree with. There's not a huge presence from the street, I have to admit. There's a gate, and that you can definitely see the building because it's a huge building. But if you're in the alley, anyone on our side and on the other side too, it pretty much dominates the landscape. So I don't think there's anything I can do about the building at this point. But in terms of the use, it really concerns me that this is going to expand into a much bigger for-profit enterprise that is going to, if it gets successful, when I just heard that there, instead of, maybe 8 to 10, which is what we saw for years in the martial arts classes, I think they'll mostly be smaller like that. But the fact that there are going to be, seminars with 25 people or more, all hours of the day, it's just going to be a lot of noise. And it's just, as I say, there are so many commercial buildings where things are usually done in the area. But building basically a field house on a admittedly large lot, but a large lot smack dab in the middle of a completely residential area, just does not seem in character to me. So I will stop there. I'd be happy to answer anything else. Otherwise, you can mute me again.
What is the website you mentioned?
So that is, I'm trying to pull it up here. It is Bioma Online, BiomaOnline, BiomaLine.com. That is the website for the proposed enterprise. And there are pictures, there are schedules of proposed classes. Yeah.
What are we doing here?
I can't hear you. Derek, are you just speaking?
My apologies. I'm going to mute Mr. Reynolds, convert him back to an attendee, and there are two other folks that have indicated that they want to testify, so I will unmute them. Next is a Miss Joanne Davis. I will be unmuting you. Just give it a moment or two to go through. Miss Davis, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So I'm speaking in support. I'm one of the students. I've known Mr. Phoenix over 20 years and also Mr. Williamson the same amount of time. And I met them at the Baltimore Aikido studio where they were students. And I have been part of the Sunday morning classes when it was a garage in the morning. There were no more than 6 people at the time. And we use open hand on the mat. There's open-handed techniques that are similar to judo and jujitsu. And there are weapons training where we use wooden weapons, including swords and sticks and wooden knives. So, I take dispute with the neighbor who says that it's noisy. The classes that Mr. Miller ran in the mornings maybe lasted an hour. So when you take a look at his schedule, what you would see is, not that classes are running all day, that there is maybe 1 or 2 in the morning with a break, and, martial arts classes that, start around 6 to 7 or 7 to 8. Some of the classes' names are marketing techniques, such as Friday Fight Night. It's not made to be something that's noisy and rousy. It's actual training, and it's a mixed bag of training. It's different techniques. They don't run I think what's people are trying to characterize this as something that's going to be a detriment in terms of noise, but it's not. So I also wrote a letter, an email in support that I will echo the same sentiments that, I've lived in Mount Washington a good 14 years now. And I support their efforts. So that's it for me.
Thank you.
All right. I will mute Ms. Davis, and then our next person to testify, I believe, is Mr. Mack. 1 second while I do this. All right. Mr. Mack, you've been unmuted. Please identify yourself for the record, please, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is John Mack. I represent the Mount Washington Improvement Association. And good afternoon to Mr. Chairman and the members of the board. Thank you for your time. We are here to offer on behalf of the Improvement Association an opposition to this new business in our neighborhood. More of a, is Mr. Bumgarner had mentioned earlier, this is an R1 district. Mount Washington is comprised of several single-family districts throughout our neighborhood with localized area for commercial development, as well as open space for parks, etc., with a small number of church locations, civic locations. You know, obviously as a neighborhood, we're very concerned to maintain the green space that isn't being made anymore, and the openness and the nature and the quality of our community. Certainly businesses that arise in the center of this residential district creates headaches in terms of additional traffic flow. Hours of operation here is certainly outside the norm, whether it's intended now or in the future. Certainly conditional uses are very hard, but we prefer those conditional uses to be applied to those areas in the neighborhood that have been identified within the area maps that we have, whether it's a commercial district, whether it's the OR2 of the Johns Hopkins University, whether it's within the school areas. That does not impact direct neighbors much this way. I think the drawings that we've seen as part of the package that the board members are looking at took an approximately 800 square foot garage and erected at approximately a 3,000 square foot new facility that actually overshadows the footprint of the existing house. I think obviously the permit allowed that to be built, not challenging that, but our more concern is the operation of a business within our residential neighborhood, which we are in opposition to. That's pretty much it. You have our written response in front of you as part of the package. Thank you for your time. Be happy to answer any questions you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to mute you again. If the board members have any questions of Mr. Mack?
No.
Okay. Let me do this real quick. All right, I'm going to go down our list and see if there are any other hands raised. We'll go back to our caller if he is still on the line as well. Let's see here. I don't see any other hands raised. We do have a caller, so let me. So calling user number 5. Are you there? 410710. You too. Calling user number 6. I'm going to unmute you.
Hello, this is Jesse Williamson.
All right, and Mr. Williamson, you are here to testify about case 2020-78 5721 Pemberton Road.
Yes. I'm calling to speak in favor of the space. I've known the owner for a long time, for over 25 years, and I've trained Aikido and with him and other people, and I, would disagree with the caller who said that it's noisy. It really isn't. I've trained at dojos in many different places, and they're more meditative spaces that, where we do, yes, we train martial arts, but it's not particularly loud activity. I mean, sometimes banging sticks together, but you're inside of a building that's now insulated and, secure. So I don't foresee anybody being able to hear what's going on inside the building. Other than that, I just think it's a great resource for the community. We've already had people that are interested in coming and checking it out. I just think it'd be a really good thing for the community. You can't really see it that well from the street. I mean, when you're driving up Pimlico Road, you can see it between the buildings, but it's not. I wouldn't say that it's that big of a eyesore. I mean, it matches the house, the siding, and everything. And yeah, I mean, I think like the classes that they're proposing to have are going to be really just in a couple hours in the evening and 1 or 2 hours, maybe 1 hour in the morning. It's not like they're going to have like big parties or anything like that. It's just small class sizes. I don't see really why there's any objection. I guess not sure what else to say. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in favor. I'm even considering, moving to the Mount Washington area to be close to it. But I've taught in the community for many years, and there really is nothing quite like that in anywhere really in the city. It's not your average, it's not just like a gym where it's like I said, it's this place for spiritual development and artistic outlet for the community. So I think it's a great thing.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to mute you and send you back to attendee mode. We'll just make sure that everyone is muted. All right, Mr. Chairman, it looks like those are all the folks that have either raised their virtual hand or called in. I will turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any questions about? Let me go back to the applicants. Having heard, I guess from some of the opposition, do you have anything you'd like to add in further support of your program?
There we go.
There we go.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah, there are a few things. Do you want to go? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. It is disheartening to hear that there are some people who are in opposition to this. And, we certainly want to assuage any concerns that anyone may have, and we certainly would invite them to come to the space, to take a tour themselves, so that, they could see what it's about, ask their questions. The space is insulated, whereas before it wasn't. Everything's up to code and all that good stuff. So the noise will not be an issue, and it is for everyone. And even those people who were in opposition, if we are granted this permit, we would love for you to participate and be a part of this as well, if we are able to.
Just a couple of the points that were made in opposition. Across the street, just to put things into perspective, across the street from us is an apartment building, a large parking lot that is constantly in and out traffic, right basically at the end of our drive. So we understand it's an apartment building. People are making deliveries and people are coming in and out. Down the street, 2 blocks, is a Methodist church, and it offers all kinds of programming besides just church service, including yoga and some other types of activities, same types of things that we're doing. Although I don't think the yoga's there anymore. To another block down from that, just recently, there seems to have been a group home, which I see. I don't know, I haven't seen anything, in the city about, but there's 30 to 35 gentlemen every day at the end of the block who are coming and doing activities. There's daycare within a few blocks of here where people have large numbers of children. So I would kind of take issue, with all due respect to Mr. Mack, that there's a lot of things going on in the community that community members are doing that support the community. That's all that we're doing. And I'm sorry that I didn't have a chance to address Mr. Reynolds. I wish we could have talked before this forum. And I'm sorry about the eyesore, but if you look at our plot, the old garage sits almost in the middle of the plot. So the new garage also sits there. It's well away from the street. And I understand that his house is impacted because his backyard looks at the front door of the facility. And yes, in the past, sometimes we've been outside again because we didn't have the garage. The garage was falling apart. It's one of the reasons we had to do this, address the garage. So I understand that sometimes when we, every once in a while bang those sticks together, it made some noise. Apologize that it was, so distracting. But we have children in the alley who are friends with our child. They run up and down the alley through Mr. Reynolds' yard, Dennis's yard, Irene's yard, making noise. We have, Dennis has this beautiful water fountain in the back and the bird sanctuary. There's lots of birds. It's just a beautiful area. They make lots of noise though. And, we love it. It adds to I'm just saying that we have a lot of good community stuff going on. And we think this, we would like to continue to serve the community as I have this community for many, many years. My wife also. And, we hope that we can, get this use permit so we can continue to do that because it's the community that is benefiting from this endeavor.
Just out of curiosity, is there some reason why that you guys didn't start this in like a more commercial, rent like a commercial space to have this instead of having it in your backyard in the neighborhood?
Yes. First of all, I was going between a number of different dojo to teach, including a couple of my own club at Hopkins. So it was easier to consolidate in one place than to keep running to those other spaces. Also, I retired from the Baltimore City Schools and I homeschool my youngest. So I already have adult children, but I homeschool my youngest. So it was easier to, since we were redoing the building anyway, and I was bringing Hopkins students here so they'd have like another space. And it was very small numbers, as you heard before. And we figured, okay, if we do an after schools program, we can kind of have them interact with those Hopkins students, there were grad students and undergrad students who are doing really cool things and was willing to work with the children. So originally that was kind of the whole thrust of the business, if you will, because, we are offering our time and services. We do charge very minimal fees compared to what the going rate is for martial arts and kids programs, because we have to at least maintain the facility. But again, we're looking at getting funding to make sure that the kids won't have to pay and it can just be a resource. But, we still have to pay for the overhead,
Do you have any plans on expanding? I mean, right now you talk about having small numbers, but do you have plans on expanding, the number of students at the dojo?
No, the numbers that you'll see that we've given you, those are really and on the side of the numbers we're working with. We have another location at Hopkins University for the club, but the problem is that location changes according to what the university needs. So we needed something a little more solid because we can have the Hopkins bus they can students can take that to the community back and forth. So it was very convenient in that regard. We also wanted to set up the proper class. So you come in and it's meditative, and it's not just like a university gym room. So we thought we could again combine the college with the kids.
Also, when looking at the space, there are but so many people the space can hold. So as mentioned before, with the arts and crafts, and it's like 6 to 8 people can even fit in the space. And with the mat space, it's like 25 is like pushing it, so just for just the sheer amount of space that there actually is, we have no intentions of adding anything else to the dojo because our whole life savings went into this. There is no more money.
Right.
So there's going to be no extensions to this building in the future.
How many activities could you run at one time?
We run one activity at a time. So there's only one time on the calendar where there are 2 activities. And the reason why there are 2 activities is if parents come with their kids can be doing something in the art room while the parents are doing martial arts. That's the only time on the schedule where there are 2 things happening at once. Otherwise, it's only one thing happening at a time.
You have any intention of using the outside space?
Just for kids to kick the ball around if they come after school. But most of the activities will be inside.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a couple of thoughts to add to the discussion. Number one, this is merely a reminder to board members, but just to make sure that the applicant and folks who are still on the line understand that land use changes like conditional uses run with the land and not the operator. So I think some of the concern from the community is valid, not with these particular operators necessarily, but if you all won the lottery tomorrow and you left our fair city, whoever moved in next could operate a community center that might not be as tame as what you have described. So that's one kind of point to make. Secondarily, these lots, as we've mentioned, are very large. So that's very likely why the secondary building never triggered any further review, because the lots are very large. If they wouldn't encroach on the setback or anything like that, they would never come for further review by this board or any other public review other than the regular permits process. Number 2, the another use that would be allowed by conditional use in the R1 district is something called a home occupation. So a home occupation is exactly what you think it is, and could extend to something like martial arts classes or art studios. Not that this is what that is, but it's merely another example of how someone in a similar circumstance with a large lot could use their property as a combination residential with some kind of other commercial or vocational aspect to it. Just to add those kind of like that coloring into what is allowed and what is not allowed in R1 district. Certainly R1 districts are the least dense, the largest lotted lots in the city of Baltimore, but the zoning code does allow limited institutional uses for those lots, as you already mentioned. As a conditional use, as conditional uses always are, the board has a great deal of discretion to apply conditions to any potential approval. That includes limiting hours, that includes limiting capacity, limited programming, etc. So there's a great amount of latitude that this board has in, if it decides to approve a use, to putting limits on that use. Those limits can be revisited down the line if the property is abiding by those restrictions. That's certainly something that we've done in the past, where an applicant can reapply a year or 2 or 3 down the road if they want to increase capacity or increase hours. Again, this is general conditional use things that the board has done in the past.
May I comment on what Mr. Baumgartner just said?
Certainly.
Just a question. So if we moved, let's say, and you were saying that use permit could be used by some, wouldn't that use permit only really apply to our business and building? I don't know the answer to this, so I'm asking. Or can someone just automatically use the use permit that was issued for the building?
They would theoretically have to reapply for the use.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But as long as the use matched its current use, it would be automatically approved. It wouldn't necessarily have to go back through a public hearing review.
Gotcha.
So if someone else moved into the building, had no interest in martial arts, had no interest in the arts aspect, but wanted to run some kind of other community center, they would merely reapply for the use, and that would be granted by right.
Gotcha. And also, we did talk at housing about home occupation. We'd have to make sure the buildings were connected, but they said that we would still probably end up in this process because if someone like Mr. Reynolds, for instance, objected, we would still be here having a discussion about whether or not this was acceptable use or not. So I just want to put that out there. We did have that discussion.
That's correct. The home occupation use and the community center use are treated the same. So they're both conditional uses in this R1 district.
Thank you.
At this point, I think we've heard from everyone. Is that right, Mr. Baumgartner? Who's called in?
So let me do just one more check to make sure I didn't miss anyone. Let me unmute some callers real fast just to make sure I didn't miss any callers that might want to testify. I believe that is it. Let me check. There is a new call-in. There are actually 2 new call-in folks. If there's anyone on the line right now that would like to testify that has not already testified, please identify yourselves. So any new call-in users that have not already testified? Hearing none, I'm going to mute everyone again. And Mr. Chairman, those are all the folks that I can identify as wishing to testify.
So what's up there?
Mr. Chairman, you were muted. I just
okay. Sorry about that. Thank you for your presentation. If there are no more questions from the board, we'll conclude this presentation for this particular matter and proceed to the next phase of this, which is to deliberate on this matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me mute everyone so we can keep going here. All right, Mr. Chairman and board members, that is the conclusion of the regular docket. Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.